Hello. Right, are we live? Not entirely sure. This is new to me as well. So, right, hello. I think we're live. So excuse me if anything goes wrong, but trying it this way instead this time because had a few issues uploading it. So I thought we'd just go live and hopefully it'll just go straight up. To be honest, welcome back to the Revere End YouTube channel. My name's Willie Dunthorne, obviously, and I've just sat through quite a boring game, in all honesty. Not the result that Norwich City would have hoped for. Not the end of the world, of course. Norwich in recent weeks have put themselves in a position where, fortunately, a draw at home isn't the worst result. But let's start with the lineup. It was an unchanged 11, wasn't it, from that win at Ashton Gate? Interestingly, Zimmerman replaced Cantwell on the bench. And I think there's always an immediate sort of tendency to sort of infer that maybe Todd's application is the reason for that, but it does appear that maybe it was just a knock, and hopefully it isn't anything too serious in terms of either an injury or sort of a maybe an application issue from Todd. But no, that doesn't appear the case. And in terms of Millwall, they set up how we predicted, really 3-4-3. At times it was a 5-4-1, but to be fair to them, they did get those wide players forward, which is always the difference, isn't it, in terms of how that system is depicted, I suppose. I thought it was quite interesting that Shane Ferguson was out wide on that left-hand side. He's usually somebody you'd associate with fulfilling a wing-back role. So the fact that he was maybe a little bit further forward suggested to me that they might be a little bit more defensive. But to be fair to them, they defended their half well, but did break forward sort of sufficiently as well. In terms of the game, like it was a bit boring, to be honest, and it was an extremely slow start. Norwich were aggressive in the press, but they struggled to sort of get Pookie into the game, and the attempts that they did have weren't really sort of falling to, like I say, to the right players, or weren't really being sort of taken. The first, I suppose, chance, if you like, is Stiepermann in the 19th minute. Rupp intercepts, plays in Pookie, who almost reversed it to Stiepermann. And I think he has to do better. This is something that, I've been fairly critical of myself, and Alfie have been of Stiepermann as a firework goes off. Of Stiepermann, and we gave him his credit against Bristol City. He was obviously instrumental in Norwich's win. But for me today, I didn't really feel like he was as effective. Often with Stiepermann against the stronger sides and teams who are more physical, he does tend to struggle because ultimately his main strength isn't maybe as much of a gain as in terms of when you come up against more physical opponents, it can be a little bit more problematic. But like I said, there was very few chances, and the Stiepermann one was the main sort of one that Norwich had up until that point, and you just feel like he has to be more clinical in front of goal. The biggest sort of event up to that point was probably Skip happened to come off momentarily, and Norwich being down to 10 men, and you just worry that maybe Mill will make the sort of numerical advantage count, but they managed to hold off until Skip got his replacement shirt, I suppose, and there was no blood, and he was back on. Rupp was a key player and was instrumental and heavily involved in everything that Norwich done today, and he finds himself in the 38th minute in the area after quite a brilliant piece of play from Buendia. But he can't quite get the shot off as Murray Wallace outmuscles him. And then you have the Plaqueta chance where he rattles the post. And up until that point, that was the closest City have come. Emmy and Max sort of exchange and passes out on that right-hand side, which they do fairly often and is a successful way that Norwich try and go about their business, on that right-hand side. And Emmy and Max are always instrumental in anything that Norwich do. And it finds itself to Pookie, who pulls it back, and the pole has the opportunity to sort of steady himself, and unfortunately can't quite, I suppose, find the target. Hits the post, but not sure that's ever really testing Biakowski, who had an interesting game, fairly decent, but you did feel like we could get past him. There was one or two moments of anxiety, I suppose, and question if you're a Millwall fan, that we'll get onto in a moment. I suppose going into half-time, looking at the stats, we had 64% possession, 12 shots, but only 3 on target, with 1 hitting the post, obviously. But an 88% pass success rate, which, suggests sort of how good Norwich are keeping at the ball, but they didn't really break through the lines well enough, and there wasn't really enough, I suppose, end product with that possession. Um, I just felt like we were far too narrow. We needed to get Plaqueta and Aaron's out wide, and whether that is part of a free at the back or whether you just instruct Plaqueta to just be more, just stay out wide, get chalk on your boots. It's a footballing cliche, but I think today it was fairly relevant. You know, that was how we were going to sort of create that space, and we just didn't do that enough today. And I think Rob, like I said, he'd been wasteful with his 4 shots, but to be fair to him and Skip, I think they were excellent in midfield, especially in that first half. They won everything, and they're forming quite a formidable partnership in midfield. And certainly, I think the best that Norwich City have seen in recent years. You know, they can do a little bit of everything, those two, which is promising. We then have a slight moment of worry in terms of being a Norwich fan. Emi Buendia loses possession in the 50th minute, and it could have been a problem for City. And this maybe wasn't that big of a moment in the game. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think it really sort of highlights just how important Hanley can be when we play that high line. Grant Hanley is a player that rightly or wrongly, I wouldn't say myself and Alfie have criticised, but we just feel like maybe the fact that we're sort of down to those 2 centre backs at the moment in our 4th season under Farke and Webber is a little bit of a worry. But and Hanley isn't maybe necessarily the type of centre back you'd associate with Daniel Farke or Stuart Webber's style of play. But his pace is something that rarely gets talked about, and it was excellent in sort of allowing Norwich just to sort of cover up behind them. They play such a high line because we do like to play in the opposition's half, and you need maybe a get out of jail card. And Ben Godfrey was that for us multiple times when he was here. And it feels like maybe Grant Hanley is just sort of taking over from Godfrey in terms of that role. And I think him and Gibson are, you know, as the games go on, they do look a better partnership. And I think, like I say, we've said this before, you have to give those 2 time. They're still probably catching up to being entirely match sort of fit and sharp in that regard. There's then this weird moment, like I say, from Biakowski where he smashes the ball against Pukki, and I don't think City can be looking at moments like that to win them today's game, but maybe if it's your day, it ricochets into the path of a Norwich player, or maybe even rolls into the back of an empty net. But it wasn't the case, and like I say, Norwich just that moment that just didn't happen for them today, like it has in those previous other home games where we've scored late on. And then the 73rd minute is probably the best chance of the game, and I think we can, like I say, we can talk about how maybe it didn't fall for Norwich, how they didn't quite get the rub of the green. For me, this has to be taken. It's the Emi Buendia chance in the 73rd minute. Steepman finds Emi, who's just sort of to the right of the centre, one-on-one with Biakowski, and despite 2 attempts at it, he can't find a way through. And I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating. I think if Emi doesn't take that goal against Bristol City, then we're probably talking about this in a little bit more detail. But I know there's reasons as to why Emi Buendia is still a Norwich City player, and maybe his finishing in front of goal is still them. You know, we can't expect Emi Buendia to be the complete player, because ultimately, if he was, you know, he wouldn't be at Norwich. It'd be far too valuable for us to be able to keep hold of, to be honest. But that, like I say, felt like the moment that Norwich had to take, and they didn't quite do that. And this isn't the first time we've seen it from Buendia. He obviously took his goal away well, but let's not forget, sort of 6 minutes prior, that he wasted another chance, and it feels like a little bit of a regular theme. Credit where credit's due for him. I feel like I'm really impressed with the runs he's making in behind it. They have a lot more threat going forward, Norwich, and it's something that I personally want to see a lot more of. And I think we have seen that, and goals will come from that. But you have to be able to take your chances, and Norwich obviously done that against Bristol, but couldn't quite manage it today. So ultimately, a point. It's not the worst result in the world. I think we're away at Swansea at home. I think we must be away. And that'll be a tough game because I'm a massive fan of the way Swansea play. But there is maybe a theory or a suggestion that Norwich are better against those sides, although, you know, we did struggle against Brentford, so I wouldn't be too sort of inclined to agree with that just yet. But I feel like when sides, you know, do play, there is a bit more space in behind, and it's just about if Norwich can take their chances, really. I don't really have too many worries about us defensively. Like I say, in midfield, I think we control the game. And we do create chances. We have very attacking flair players like Plaqueta, Emi, Steepman to an extent, and obviously Todd Cantwell wasn't involved today. And with somebody like Pookie up front, you always feel like Norwich have a goal in them. And today it just didn't quite happen. And we've had the rub of the green maybe in recent weeks. I look at some of those late winners and those late goals later on in the game, and you just feel like eventually that luck is almost going to run out to an extent. And I think it did today. So 0-0, not the worst result in the world. Myself and Andrew will cover it in more detail in our next podcast after the Swansea game. So, like I say, it's always interesting to think about how our mood will be then. But if you are new around here, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps us out. And if you want to follow us on social media, use the handle @the Revere End. But until next time, I've been Billy from the Revere End. I'll see you guys soon.